What if your favorite games weren't as innocent as they seemed? Today we're delving into some of the darkest fan theories in video games, ranging from unsettlingly eerie to downright chilling. While some of these theories have been debunked, they remain haunting and disturbing nonetheless. But be warned. Major spoilers are ahead for several games since these theories assume you're familiar with the whole story. Ghosts of Pac Man. The Ghosts of Pac Man fan theory offers a dark and eerie interpretation of the classic arcade game. Instead of being simple antagonists chasing Pac Man for gameplay purposes, the theory suggests that the ghosts might actually represent trapped souls or restless spirits, doomed to wander the maze forever. In the game, Pac Man navigates a confined labyrinth, endlessly consuming dots and being pursued by 4 colorful ghosts: Blinky, Pinky, Inky, and Clyde. On the surface, this seems like a straightforward cat and mouse chase. However, some fans believe the maze is a form of purgatory, with Pac Man embodying a spirit trying to escape or find peace. The ghosts, then, are souls already trapped in this endless cycle, possibly reflecting different emotions or states of mind. Blinky, the most aggressive, could represent anger, while Clyde's random movements might symbolize confusion or despair. The constant chase becomes more sinister under this theory. Pac Man's consumption of the ghosts after eating a power pellet could be interpreted as an act of dominance over these other souls, but they respawn shortly after, showing the futility of his struggle. No matter how many times he defeats them, they always come back, trapping everyone in an eternal loop, suggesting an endless cycle of death and rebirth in this purgatorial space. Ditto are failed Mew clones, Pokemon Red or Blue. One of the most popular and unsettling fan theories in the Pokemon world is the idea that Ditto, the shape-shifting Pokemon, is actually a failed clone of the legendary Mew. This theory stems from several striking similarities between Ditto and Mew, as well as the darker aspects of Pokemon's cloning experiments seen in the games. Both Pokemon are the only ones in the game that can naturally learn Transform, a move that lets them copy the appearance and abilities of any other Pokemon. This move makes sense for Mew, the ancestor of all Pokemon, but for Ditto, it seems like the result of genetic tampering. Then, there's the connection to the lab on Cinnabar Island in Pokemon Red or Blue, where scientists were experimenting with cloning Mew. The lore tells us that Mewtwo, the genetically enhanced clone, was the only successful result. But what if Ditto was one of the failed attempts, discarded by the scientists? This theory implies that Ditto isn't just a goofy blob, but rather the byproduct of failed scientific attempts to harness Mew's power, giving Ditto a tragic origin story. Mario is brick-smashing toads. One of the darkest fan theories in the Mario universe is that Mario isn't just stomping Goombas and Koopas. He might also be killing the Mushroom People. The theory comes from a chilling interpretation of the manual for Super Mario Bros. On the NES, which states that Bowser turned the Mushroom Kingdom's people into bricks and blocks. The key detail here is that when Mario breaks bricks to collect power-ups or clear obstacles, he could actually be smashing toads, who were once the kingdom's citizens. Every time Mario punches a brick, he might be unknowingly destroying the Mushroom Kingdom's inhabitants, who were cursed by Bowser's magic. This theory puts a dark twist on Mario's heroic actions. Instead of just liberating the kingdom, he's also contributing to the devastation caused by Bowser's curse. It makes you question whether Mario is aware of what's happening, or if he's simply too focused on saving Princess Peach to notice the consequences of his brick smashing. The war backstory of Splatoon. Splatoon is known for its vibrant colors, fun gameplay, and Squid Kid characters called Inklings. But beneath all the ink-covered battles lies a much darker backstory. The theory, and much of it is supported by in-game lore, suggests that Splatoon takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where humanity has gone extinct. The Inklings, along with other sea creatures like the Octolings, evolved to take over the Earth after humans were wiped out. The game hints at this grim past through the sunken scrolls, collectibles scattered throughout the single-player mode. These scrolls reveal that rising sea levels and environmental collapse led to humanity's demise. Over time, aquatic life evolved, becoming the new dominant species. What seems like harmless paintball matches in Splatoon is actually the result of a long history of war between the Inklings and their rivals, the Octarians, over territory and survival. The tension between these two species runs deep, and Splatoon's cheerful atmosphere covers up a violent history of conflict. The disturbing reality of Waddle Dee, Kirby series. One of the darkest fan theories in the Kirby universe centers around the seemingly innocent Waddle Dees. These little creatures are everywhere in the games, cute, harmless, and often not even aggressive unless provoked. But this theory suggests something much darker. Waddle Dees might be victims of brainwashing, trapped in a life of servitude. Waddle Dees are usually seen working under King Dedede, often as soldiers, helpers, or just aimless background characters. What makes this strange is that most of the time, they don't attack Kirby unless directly ordered or forced. They seem passive, as if they've lost all will to resist. Some fans believe that they have been brainwashed, stripped of their free will, and forced to live out a life of mindless servitude. The theory gets creepier when you consider the mass numbers of Waddle Dees that exist. What if they were once intelligent creatures who've been suppressed into this blank state of existence, doing whatever they're told? In a world as strange as Dreamland, this idea doesn't seem that far-fetched, especially given Dedede's history of using mind control in games like Kirby's Dream Land 2. This theory casts Waddle Dees not as harmless background characters, but as tragic, brainwashed victims forced into a life they can't escape. The Herobrine Conspiracy, Minecraft. Herobrine is said to be a ghostly figure resembling the default character Steve, but with glowing white eyes. Players claim to have seen Herobrine appear in their worlds, often doing strange things like removing leaves from trees, creating tunnels, or just standing in the distance watching them. The character's origin traces back to a 2010 post on the Minecraft forums and a creepypasta that claimed Herobrine was the spirit of the deceased brother of Marcus Notch Person, the game's creator. Notch himself debunked this, stating he never had a brother. But he leaned into the myth, occasionally adding "removed Herobrine" in patch notes as a joke, keeping the conspiracy alive for years. Rivals dead Pokemon, Pokemon Red and Blue. In Pokemon Red or Blue, a popular theory suggests that your rival's Raticate dies after the battle on the SS Anne. The idea stems from the fact that, after battling his Raticate, he never uses it again. When you meet him next in Lavender Town, a location famously associated with Pokemon graves, he comments that he's there to pay respects to his Pokemon. Fans connected these details and speculated that your rival's Raticate may have succumbed to injuries from your battle on the SS Anne, leading to him mourning its death. The dialogue, where your rival questions why you're in the tower without any dead Pokemon, adds a darker tone to this interpretation. One of the darkest fan theories about Animal Crossing takes the game's peaceful exterior and turns it into something far more sinister. According to this theory, the player character is a child who has been abducted and taken to a strange village of anthropomorphic animals where they are forced into a cycle of unpaid labor under the guise of community living. At the start of the game, the player is inexplicably transported to the village by a character named Kapp'n, a turtle-like creature who resembles the kappa from Japanese folklore, creatures known for abducting children. When you first arrive in the village, you don't have any family or memories of a life before. The player is also immediately saddled with a large debt by Tom Nook, a raccoon who controls much of the town's economy. Despite the innocent exterior, Tom Nook forces the player into a repetitive cycle of working off debt, with each repayment leading to further debt. This massive debt is impossible to escape, and you're forced to work for Nook, doing odd jobs, collecting items, and improving the town, all while earning just enough money to keep paying off your debt, but never really getting ahead. The villagers, who seem overly friendly, are seen as part of the cult. They keep you distracted with constant tasks, social events, and a false sense of community, while you're actually trapped in a cycle of servitude. Some fans even suggest that the villagers' unusually cheerful demeanor hides something darker, like brainwashing, to keep you complacent. Essentially, you're stuck in a child labor cult, disguised as a quaint, peaceful village. Link is dead, Majora's Mask. According to this theory, Link, the protagonist from The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, dies at the beginning of Majora's Mask, and the game represents his journey through the afterlife. The theory is supported by the idea that Termina, the setting of Majora's Mask, is a sort of purgatory or limbo. In the opening of Majora's Mask, Link falls into the land of Termina after searching for his lost friend Navi. The theory posits that this fall symbolizes his death, and Termina itself represents Purgatory, where Link confronts his grief, fear, and regret. One of the key points in this theory is that the 5 main regions in the game, Clocktown, Woodfall, Snowhead, Great Bay, and Ikana Canyon, each represent one of the 5 stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. The characters in these regions all have tragic backstories or are facing impending doom, which further supports the idea that Link is navigating an emotional and spiritual journey rather than a physical one. The game's 3-day cycle, where Link repeatedly relives the same events, is interpreted as symbolic of being stuck in limbo, unable to move on until he completes his final mission and achieves closure. Squall is dead, Final Fantasy VIII. This theory suggests that Squall, the main character, actually dies at the end of Disc 1, and everything that happens afterward is a dream or hallucination in his dying moments. The theory begins with Squall being impaled by Sorceress Idia's ice shard during the assassination attempt in Dealing City. According to this interpretation, Squall's survival, as shown in the game, never actually happens. Instead, the bizarre and increasingly surreal events in the later discs, such as the floating gardens, strange plot twists, and outlandish enemies, represent a dying dream or a form of purgatory where Squall's subconscious creates a perfect fantasy. This theory points out that after the first disc, many of the game's events seem too fantastical, including Squall's sudden promotion to leader and his deepening romance with Rinoa, who showed little interest in him before. The sudden shift in tone and the more dreamlike aspects of the narrative, especially in the final scenes, further fuel the theory. The game's cryptic ending, in which Squall's face is shown distorted and unclear, reinforces the idea that he's struggling to accept his death. Fallout's Vault Experiments. One of the darkest fan theories in the Fallout universe revolves around the infamous vaults, which were originally marketed as safe havens to protect people from nuclear fallout. But in reality, many vaults were designed as twisted social experiments by Vault Tech. Each vault had its own disturbing experiment. For example, Vault 11 forced its residents to sacrifice one person every year under the threat that everyone else would die if they refused. Vault 106 secretly pumped hallucinogenic gas into the air, driving its residents insane. Then there's Vault 34, which was intentionally overstocked with weapons, but not enough space, leading to chaos as overpopulation and limited resources caused violence and anarchy. While some vaults were meant to function normally, many were built to observe how people would react to extreme conditions. Vault Tech's sinister goal was to gather data on how humans could be manipulated or conditioned to survive, often at the cost of the inhabitants' sanity or lives. These experiments weren't just random either. Vault Tech was part of a larger plan involving the Enclave, a shadowy government faction that wanted to shape humanity's future after the bombs fell. It adds a whole new layer of horror to Fallout's post-apocalyptic world, showing that the real threat wasn't just nuclear war, but also the manipulation of survivors by the very companies that promised to protect them. Shepard Indoctrination, Mass Effect 3. The Shepard Indoctrination theory from Mass Effect 3 proposes that by the game's final events, Commander Shepard has been mentally compromised or indoctrinated by the Reapers. According to this theory, the ending, particularly after Shepard is hit by the Reaper's beam near the Crucible, is not real, but takes place in Shepard's mind. The Reapers are attempting to control Shepard, and the final choices, destroy, control, and synthesis, represent different outcomes of this indoctrination. Supporters of the theory point to several key pieces of evidence. One of the most significant is the recurring dream sequences, where Shepard is haunted by visions of a child, often seen as symbolic of the Reaper's influence. The eerie, slow-motion scene when Shepard approaches the Crucible beam, accompanied by distorted audio and visuals, is also cited as a sign that reality is breaking down. Another detail is the fact that the Destroy ending, where Shepard resists the Reapers, is presented with a red color scheme, typically associated with negative outcomes, to subconsciously dissuade the player from choosing it. Whereas the Synthesis and Control endings are more aligned with the Reaper's goals. Companion cubes contain human bodies. Portal. The theory suggests that the companion cubes in Portal contain the bodies of former test subjects. It stems from Portal's unsettling atmosphere and GLaDOS's cryptic lines. One in particular stands out. The companion cube will never threaten to stab you and in fact cannot speak. Fans began speculating about why GLaDOS would mention stabbing, implying that something, or someone, inside the cube could be capable of violence. Adding to the theory is GLaDOS's instruction to euthanize the companion cube by incinerating it in the final test chamber. The use of the word euthanize, typically reserved for living creatures, added another layer of mystery. Additionally, Portal 2 contains a line from Wheatley referencing past test subjects, reinforcing the idea that GLaDOS has a history of disposing of test subjects, fueling speculation about what, or who, might be inside the cubes. The Menses Vial theory. Bloodborne. This theory proposes that the healing blood vials provided by NPCs like Ariana Iosefka and Sister Adela might be derived from menstrual blood. Further fueling this theory is the lore surrounding the Healing Church, which uses women as vessels for blood, referring to them as blood saints. The word menses, linked to the nightmare realm in the game, closely resembles menses, the Latin word for menstruation, reinforcing this connection between blood, fertility, and cosmic forces. The game also has heavy references to the moon and cycles, both symbolically tied to menstruation. The Great Ones, cosmic beings central to the game's lore, often seek offspring, further tying these concepts of fertility and blood to the greater themes of birth and creation. Ariana, for example, stops providing blood when she becomes pregnant, suggesting her fertility may play a role in the nature of the blood. This dark theory is a play on Bloodborne's overarching themes of blood rituals, the quest for immortality, and the perversion of natural processes. Abortion theory. Earthbound. The Earthbound abortion theory centers around the final battle with Gigas, interpreting it as a symbolic abortion. This theory stems from the disturbing imagery and dialogue that unfolds during the climactic battle. The unsettling visuals during the fight, such as swirling red patterns resembling a womb, fuel this interpretation. Gigas' distorted, fetus-like appearance and the dialogue, which becomes increasingly nonsensical and chaotic, add to the theory that you are preventing his birth. Compounding this, defeating Gigas isn't through traditional combat but through prayers, which some interpret as a representation of pleading for mercy, perhaps reflecting themes of life, death, or potential. The origin of the theory stems from creator Shigesato Itoi's personal trauma, as he once recalled seeing a graphic movie scene as a child that he mistook as an assault, but later learned involved an abortion scene. This scene, he noted, left a deep psychological scar, which later informed the game's design. This real-life inspiration has led some fans to draw parallels between Gigas' incomprehensible form and the concept of an unborn or incomplete being. The murder theory, Limbo. The beauty of the Limbo game lies in its ambiguity, paired with its open-ended story. Many fan theories sprouted due to this, but none is darker than the murder theory. The Limbo murder theory suggests that after his death, the nameless boy embarks on a journey to murder his sister from beyond the grave. The hostile creatures and enemies he encounters along the way are thought to represent his subconscious mind trying to stop him, manifesting as his fears, guilt, and childhood bullies. These psychological barriers aim to prevent him from completing his dark goal. At one point, the boy encounters his sister, but is unable to go through with killing her. He forces himself to walk away, symbolizing a brief internal struggle. However, after breaking through the final mental barrier that holds him back, the boy goes back to find his sister once again, this time playing near his grave. In the theory's most chilling moment, as he approaches her, she looks up, potentially unaware of the danger looming.